Speaker, I know the whole House will want to send our condolences to the family of our former colleague, David Warburton. I also welcome the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister has referred herself to the ethics advisor. She has admitted she underpaid tax. So why is she still in office? But there is not just a crisis at the very top of his cabinet.
The Angela Rayner scandal, Labour's Deputy PM fighting for political survival. Right. Before we dive into this absolute car crash of a political scandal, smash that subscribe button because, trust me, you're going to want to stay updated on how this unfolds. This is a kind of Westminster drama that writes itself, and frankly, it's getting rather messy indeed. Angela Rayner is fighting for her political life, and the irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The woman who spent years lambasting Tories for their financial improprieties has just admitted to underpaying stamp duty on her £800,000 seaside flat in Hove. The Deputy Prime Minister, the Housing Secretary, the woman who's supposed to be cleaning up Britain's housing crisis, has managed to create her own rather spectacular mess. And the bill? A cool £40,000 that she now owes to the taxman. Let's be absolutely clear about what's happened here because the details matter, and they paint a picture that's becoming increasingly uncomfortable for Labour. Rayner purchased this coastal property in May, and according to her own admission, she was given legal advice that turned out to be spectacularly wrong. She paid £30,000 in stamp duty when she should have paid £70,000 because, and here's where it gets technical,
as much as they like, the whole country knows what a mess of the economy they are making. Mr. Speaker, it is clear the taxes are going up for everyone, except perhaps the Deputy Prime Minister.
A family home in Ashton-under-Lyne was held in a trust that still gave her financial interest in the property. Now, if you're enjoying this deep dive into Westminster's latest scandal, make sure you're subscribed because we're just getting started, and this story has more twist than a political thriller. The trust arrangement itself tells a rather poignant story. It was established in 2020 to provide for one of Rayner's sons who suffered complications as a premature baby and was left with lasting impairments. It's the kind of financial planning that any responsible parent would undertake, and it adds a deeply human element to what might otherwise be seen as straightforward tax avoidance. But here's where the politics gets brutal because good intentions don't exempt you from tax law, and Rayner's political opponents are absolutely not interested in her family circumstances when there's blood in the water.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure we would have heard all that sympathy if it was a Conservative Deputy Prime Minister who was being attacked. I remember when the Prime Minister said that tax evasion is a criminal offence and should be treated as all other fraud. If he had a backbone, he would sack her.
The timing of this revelation is particularly damaging for Labour. We're approaching the November budget where Rachel Reeves is expected to announce significant tax increases, including potentially targeting property wealth. Having your Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary caught underpaying property taxes is a kind of political own goal that opposition parties dream about. Badenoch, never one to miss an opportunity, immediately pounced, questioning why Rayner remained in post and effectively calling Starmer spineless for not dismissing her. But here's where Starmer's political calculation becomes interesting, and if you want to understand how modern Labour operates, you need to subscribe and stick with me because we're about to dissect some serious Westminster dynamics. Starmer's response has been telling. He described himself as very proud to sit alongside Rayner, emphasizing her working-class background and journey to the Deputy Prime Ministership. This is...
Speaker, can I join her in her comments about Mr Warburton? I think the whole House would unite on an issue such as that. In relation to the Deputy Prime Minister, she has explained her personal circumstances in detail. She's gone over and above in setting out the details, including Mr. Speaker, yesterday afternoon, asking a court to lift a confidentiality order in relation to her own son. I know from speaking at length with the Deputy Prime Minister just how difficult that decision was for her and her family.
It isn't just political loyalty, it's strategic positioning. Rayner represents something crucial for Labour's electoral coalition. She's authentic working-class representation in a party that's often accused of abandoning its roots. She speaks to voters in former Red Wall seats who switched to the Conservatives and might be persuaded to return. Sacking her over what could be characterized as an honest mistake based on poor legal advice would send a signal that Labour is returning to its metropolitan, middle-class comfort zone. The political optics are absolutely brutal, though. Here's a woman who spent years tweeting about one rule for them, one rule for everybody else when attacking Conservative ministers over their financial affairs. Her old social media posts are being weaponized against her with surgical precision. Richard Tice from Reform UK called her the greatest hypocrite in the world and demanded her resignation. It's crude, it's effective, and it's exactly the kind of political theatre that dominates modern Westminster. What makes this particularly fascinating from a political strategy perspective, and honestly, this is why you should subscribe to see how these stories develop, is how Rayner has chosen to handle the crisis. She's referred herself to Sir Laurie Magnus, the government's ethics advisor, before anyone forced her to. It's a classic Westminster damage limitation exercise. By getting ahead of the story and subjecting herself to official scrutiny, she's attempting to control the narrative. The ethics investigation could be concluded within days, according to government sources, which suggest they want this resolved quickly before it becomes a festering wound. But the real political genius, if we can call it that, lies in how she's framed her disclosure. Rayner has positioned this as a story about a mother trying to protect a disabled child's financial future. She's revealed deeply personal family circumstances, including going to court to lift a confidentiality order so she could discuss her son's trust arrangements publicly. It's politically astute because it makes attacking her feel unseemly. What kind of person goes after a mother who's trying to provide for her disabled child?
In 2020, my son had an award, and a trust was set up by the court to deal with his finances as part of that award with a legal trustee. And in 2023, when me and my husband divorced, the decision was, because that home was adapted to support my son who has lifelong disabilities as a result of that injury that occurred to him, I took advice on that, and I relied on that legal advice that I received that said that I was liable to pay the standard stamp duty. Subsequently to that, with all of the media reports that have been coming out, I took
The timing of Starmer's knowledge about this situation remains mysteriously unclear, and that's creating its own political problem. Downing Street won't say when the Prime Minister was informed, which suggests either poor communication within the Labour hierarchy or deliberate strategy to maintain plausible deniability. Neither interpretation particularly flatters the government's competence. If you're following this story and want to understand how it connects to broader patterns in British politics, definitely subscribe because we're going to be tracking these developments closely. The parallels with previous political scandals are striking. Remember Matt Hancock's affair during COVID restrictions? Dominic Cummings' trip to Barnard Castle? What unites these stories is a gap between public standards politicians demand of others and their own behavior. Rayner has spent her career as the authentic voice calling out privilege and hypocrisy. Finding herself on the wrong end of tax arrangements that benefit the wealthy is politically devastating precisely because it undermines her core brand. The Conservative response has been predictably brutal but also strategically calculated. They are not just attacking Rayner, they are using her situation to undermine Labour's entire taxation agenda. How can a government that about to increase taxes on property wealth maintain credibility when its own housing secretary has underpaid property taxes? It's the kind of political attack line that writes itself. But here's what's really interesting about this scandal, and why political observers should be paying attention. Rayner's survival or downfall will signal something important about Starmer's leadership style and Labour's political priorities. If he keeps her, he's prioritizing party unity and working-class representation over media management. If he sacrifices her, he's signaling that electability trumps loyalty and that Labour will abandon MPs who become liabilities. The Liberal Democrats' response has been particularly interesting. Ed Davey offered qualified support, noting that as a parent of a disabled child, he understands Rayner's motivations regarding the trust arrangement. It's a reminder that Westminster's political dynamics aren't always purely partisan. Sometimes shared human experience transcends party politics. What happens next is crucial for both Rayner personally and Labour politically. The ethics advisor's investigation will determine whether she broke the ministerial code. If she's cleared, this becomes a story about media persecution and political point scoring. If she's found to have breached standards, her position becomes untenable regardless of Starmer's personal loyalty. Make sure you're subscribed because we'll be following every development in this story as it unfolds. The broader implications for Labour's political project are significant. The party came to power promising to restore integrity to British politics after years of Conservative scandals. Having your Deputy Prime Minister embroiled in a tax controversy within months of taking office undermines that narrative. It suggests that the problems with British politics aren't just about the Conservative Party, but about a system where financial complexity and political ambition intersect in ways that create ethical grey areas. Rayner's case also highlights the challenges facing working-class politicians who achieve senior positions. The trust arrangements that created this tax liability were established to protect her disabled son's financial future. It's exactly the kind of responsible financial planning that any parent in her situation would undertake. But the complexity of these arrangements, combined with apparently inadequate legal advice, has created a political crisis that threatens to end her career. The £40,000 he potentially owes HMRC might seem modest compared to the financial scandals that have engulfed previous governments, but in politics, the appearance of impropriety often matters more than the scale of the problem. Rayner has positioned herself as the authentic voice of working-class Britain. Being caught in tax arrangements that benefit the wealthy, even inadvertently, undermines that positioning in ways that could prove politically fatal. The investigation speed will be crucial. Government sources suggest it could be concluded within days, which indicates a desire to resolve this quickly. The longer it drags on, the more damage it does to both Rayner personally and Labour's broader political project. Every day this story remains in the headlines is a day Labour isn't talking about its policy agenda or attacking Conservative failures. If you want to understand how the scandal fits into broader patterns of British political behaviour, subscribe and join our ongoing analysis of Westminster's power games. What's particularly striking about this case is how it illustrates the intersection of personal circumstances and political positioning. Rayner's trust arrangements weren't created for tax avoidance. They were established to protect her son's future. But the political system doesn't differentiate between complex family circumstances and deliberate tax planning. The appearance of impropriety creates the same political damage regardless of intent. The response from different political quarters reveals interesting dynamics. Conservative attacks have been predictably aggressive, but they've been careful to focus on hypocrisy rather than attacking Rayner's family circumstances directly. Reform UK has been more crude in its condemnation. The Liberal Democrats have offered nuanced support that acknowledges the personal dimensions of the story. These different approaches reflect broader political strategies and positioning. Rayner's decision to go to court to lift the confidentiality order protecting her son's trust arrangements demonstrates the political calculation at work. By making public deeply personal family information, she's attempting to reframe the narrative from tax avoidance to maternal protection. It's politically risky because it exposes private family circumstances to public scrutiny, but it might be the only strategy available to her. The broader question this raises is about the intersection of private financial arrangements and public political positions. Should politicians be held to different standards regarding their personal financial affairs? Rayner would argue that she sought professional advice and followed it. Her critics would argue that as Housing Secretary, she should have been more aware of stamp duty implications. Both positions have merit, which is why this story has such political potency. For Starmer, this presents a classic political leadership test. Standing by Rayner demonstrates loyalty and suggests that Labour won't abandon working-class representatives when they face difficulties. But it also associates his government with tax controversy at exactly the wrong political moment. His calculation appears to be that Rayner's authentic working-class appeal outweighs the political damage from this scandal. The investigation's outcome will be crucial, but the political damage may already be done. Even if Rayner is cleared of breaking the ministerial code, the story has undermined her positioning as a voice of authentic working-class politics. The irony of the situation, a working-class politician caught in complex tax arrangements typically associated with wealthy property investors, will linger regardless of the official outcome. This scandal exemplifies modern political warfare where personal circumstances become political weapons. Rayner's family situation, her son's disability, her divorce, her property arrangements, all have become part of the political battlefield. It's a reminder of the personal cost of political ambition and the way private lives become public property in contemporary politics. The resolution of this case will signal important things about Labour's political direction and Starmer's leadership style. It will also influence how other politicians manage their personal financial affairs, knowing that any complexity could become a political weapon. The intersection of personal and political, private and public, continues to shape British political culture in ways that would have been unimaginable in previous generations. So there you have it. Angela Rayner's political survival hangs in the balance, caught between family loyalty, legal complexity, and political ambition. Whether she survives will tell us something important about modern British politics and the price of authenticity in Westminster's power games. Make sure you're subscribed because the story is far from over, and the implications will ripple through British politics for months to come. The Deputy Prime Minister's fate isn't just about one politician's career. It's about the kind of political culture we're creating and the standard we demand from our representatives.